Welcome to By the Well podcast, produced by the community at Wall Street United Methodist Church in Jeffersonville, Indiana. We focus on clarity, compassion, and community. You will hear sermons as well as conversations around the intersections of faith and life. If you enjoy this podcast, like and share below.
The first scripture reading this morning is from Ezekiel 47, 1 through 12. Then he brought me back to the entrance of the temple. There was water flowing from below the entryway of the temple toward the east, for the temple faced east. And the water was flowing down from below the south side of the temple, south of the altar. Then he brought me out by the way of the north gate and led me around on the outside to the outer gate that faces towards the east. And the water was trickling out on the south side. Going on eastward with a cord in his hand, the man measured 1,000 cubits, then led me through the water, and it was ankle deep. Again he measured 1,000 and led me through the water, and it was knee deep. Again he measured 1,000 and led me through the water, and it was up to the waist. Again he measured 1,000, and it was a river that I could not cross, for the water had risen. It was deep enough to swim in, a river that could not be crossed. He said to me, "Mortal, have you seen this?" Then he led me back along the bank of the river. As I came back, I saw on the bank of the river a great many trees on one side and on the other. He said to me, "This water flows toward the eastern region and goes down into the Arabah, and when it enters the sea of stagnant waters, the water will become fresh. Whenever the river goes by, every living creature that swarms will live, and there will be many fish once these waters reach there. It will become fresh, and everything will live where the river goes. People who stand fishing beside the sea from En-Gedi to En-Eglaim, it will be a place for the spreading of nets. Its fish will be of great many kinds, like the fish of the great sea. But its swamps and marshes will not become fresh. They are to be left for salt. On the banks, on both sides of the river, there will grow all kinds of trees for food. Their leaves will not wither, nor their fruit fail. But they will bear fresh fruit every month, because the water for them flows from the sanctuary. Their fruit will be for food and leaves for healing." The second scripture reading is from Revelation 22, 1 through 5. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb, through the middle of the street of the city. On either side of the river is the tree of life, with its 12 kinds of fruit, producing its fruit each month, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. Nothing accursed will be found there anymore, but the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his servants will worship him. They will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads, and there will be no more night. They need no light of lamp or sun, for the Lord God will be their light, and they will reign forever and ever. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Jody. I'm going to follow you down. Yep. So friends, I will tell you that I am a river girl, or probably more accurately, a creek and stream and river girl, right? So like some people, Harley, who grew up near the Gulf, right? Or some people, Bethany, who grew up near lakes. I grew up in and around, well, not in, really, Sandy, that's not true. Around Streams and creeks and rivers, right? So I have, in fact, I'm quite delighted because the other day, Savannah and I were talking, and she was saying what a great childhood she had because of all the times that she got to play in creeks and streams, and it echoed for me like my experience. I have memories of wading in creeks and turning over the rocks and finding the creatures and canoeing in rivers and inner tubing in streams and things like that. And just all sorts of growing up. Ohio, is where I began my life, around creeks, streams, and rivers. New York, right? The town that I grew up in New York, is very much like Jeffersonville. It was on the banks of the Hudson River, so this feels very familiar to me, right? When I moved here, but that idea of kind of playing in and around moving water speaks to me. Now I contrast that with Nancy last week. If you remember, Nancy showed us a picture of the area where she is from in Colorado, and it was quite arid and barren, unexpectedly. Like, we think of the mountains of Colorado, but there are other parts of Colorado, and so she kind of had that arid picture with where a river sometimes is there, right? And that kind of reminds me of Israel, of course, because there are times when there is a river there, and there's a time when there's a trickle there, and there's a time when there's nothing there. But for me, when I think of rivers, I think of those flowing waters of my youth, right? Or the river in my backyard that I get to drive by every day. Every day. I made a commitment to myself and to God when I moved here. I said, God, I will never take for granted that view when I drive from the parsonage to the church, right? That's what I think of. I think of rivers flowing through these kind of lush green spaces. I think of life and that kind of movement. So that's what comes to mind for me when I hear these scriptures. But especially, I'm going to tell you that the two scriptures that Jody read, Zoe's on my mind, that Jody read, remind me of Minnesota. They remind me of Minnesota. So, Minnesota is the land of more than a few lakes. 10,000, that's right. Actually, 11,842, I think, is what I read. But it's also a land with a significant connection to rivers, right? Which is not surprising, I don't think. So the passage from Ezekiel reminds me of Lake Itasca. And what is that right there? That is the beginning of the Mississippi River. That right there is the beginning of it. You can walk across these rocks. You can walk across the beginning of the Mississippi River. And that passage from Ezekiel reminds me of that, right? That here, what starts as a trickle grows and grows and grows until we have a deep and mighty river, right? Wherever the river goes, every living creature that swarms will live, and there will be many fish once these waters reach there. It will become fresh, and everything will live where the river goes. People will stand by it, fishing it. It will be a place for the spreading of nets. Its fish will be of a great many kinds. On the banks, on both sides of the river, there will grow all kinds of trees for food. Their fruit will be for food, and their leaves for healing. And so I can imagine that vision that Ezekiel has because I've seen the Mississippi River, right? The Mississippi River has a watershed. That's all the water that drains into the Mississippi, right? From creeks and streams and rivers, yes, but just all that drains down from the land as well has a watershed of 3.2 million square kilometers. That includes all or part of 32 states and 2 Canadian provinces. Right? About 40% of the continental United States is part of the Missouri River watershed. And of course that includes us, right? Because the Ohio River flows into the Mississippi, so it's part of the Mississippi watershed. The Mississippi River and its floodplain are home to a diverse population of living things. This is going to be a lot of numbers, but I want you to kind of get a sense of the life that the river brings. There are at least 260 species of fish. That's 25% of all fish species in North America live in the Mississippi River. including more than 160 of those that are found in the Ohio River as well, right? 60% of all North American birds, that's 326 species, use the Mississippi River Basin as part of their migratory pathway, right? There are as many as 60 different separate species of freshwater mussels in the Mississippi, but the Ohio River has even more diversity than that. They've got more than 100. We have more than 100 species of freshwater mussels in the Ohio River. Those watersheds, the Mississippi and the Ohio, are host to more than 50 mammal species, including us, right? At least 145 species of amphibians and reptiles, more than 1,500 plant species that are native to the Ohio and Mississippi River, and that includes more than 100 species of trees. So rivers provide health and support for all kinds of beings, including, of course, human beings, right? And so in John's vision in Revelation, we see the river connected to the city. The city is used as an image of all humanity, right? And it's this vision of the city living in harmony with the rest of creation. Humanity living in harmony with the rest of creation, connected by the river that flows from God through the middle of the street of the city, right? Trees on either side, again, bringing sustenance and healing. And of course, that image also makes me think of Minnesota, specifically Northfield, Minnesota. Now, Northfield, Minnesota just happens to be, right up there, the home of St. Olaf College. So everybody wave to Zoe. Hi, Zoe. But here's Northfield, and you can see there is a river that runs right through the middle of it. Right through the middle of it. In fact, the Cannon River runs right through the middle of downtown. When we first visited there about 6 years ago, we stayed in this building, and you could see the little town square over here from our balcony. Steve, we fished from the balcony of that apartment building. There's all sorts of cool things. Of course, you can see that there's kind of like a river walk here. People fish off the bridges. The river provides power. I mean, going back to grist mills, but it still is part of the power sources for that area. It's an opportunity for folks to be together. Again, there's all sorts of ways. Here's the kind of river walk downtown. Man, when we were there the first time, summer, they pulled out all the stops. It was the most charming thing in the world. And here is this river running right through the middle of it, and all these people gathered around it to celebrate each other, to be connected. Now, there's lots of trees on either side, but I didn't see any fruit on them. But there is a cereal factory, which makes the whole town of Northfield smell like a bakery. And if that is not for the healing of the nations, Karen, I don't know what is. Right? So like the rivers of Ezekiel and Revelation, the Mississippi and the Ohio and the Cannon River here, right? Those are all designed and created by God to bring life, to bring health and wholeness to the land and plants and animals and people that make their homes along or within its waters. And according to the Pew Charitable Trust, when these and other rivers are healthy, they protect sources of clean drinking water for us. They preserve cultures and traditions, right? They're part of connecting us with other human communities, right? Through travel, through trade. They conserve wildlife and biodiversity in their watershed. They bolster the recreational economy, right? How many of us don't love to go and just be on the water, right? They help limit and control flooding, believe it or not, rivers do. Where we get into trouble with flooding is often when we have tried to control where rivers go, right? Because the floodplains are designed to help kind of dissipate excessive rainwater. Healthy rivers transfer nutrients, right? They bring good, rich stuff through the soil, so that improves our agriculture, our food. They help fight climate change, healthy rivers do, because they contribute to oxygen instead of plants breaking down and producing methane, right? So it's part of a healthy world, and of course they preserve a sustainable source of food. Plus, rivers just make us feel better. feel better. Researchers have found that running water can cause our brain function to recalibrate in a way similar to it does when we meditate, right? So our stress hormone cortisol, our heart rate, our breathing rate even out, reduces our stress. Even the sound of running river or stream water can help us. There have been studies where they have played the sounds of running water for those who are in treatment for cancer, and they reported when listening to water that they had a decrease in their perception of pain, right? So healthy rivers make us feel better. And the healthier our rivers are, the more they heal us, the more they improve our health and the health of the world that we share with all of creation. So I looked at a number of organizations that specifically are working with the Ohio River, and all of them said something along the lines of, rivers have brought healing and vitality to our communities, and it's our responsibility then to bring healing to rivers, right? So I don't know if any of you have seen these signs along the Ohio River Greenway this past week. Huh? You might have driven by them and just been like, I don't know what this is. These are posted by SISWAC, the Southern Indiana Stormwater Advisory Committee. I encourage you to visit their website, siswac.org, SISWAC. It's a collaboration of communities that you're a part of, right? It is Clarksville, Sellersburg, Jeffersonville, New Albany, Madison, Floyd County, Oak Park Conservancy District, Clark County, Georgetown. And they work together and then work with the businesses, the schools, the construction projects, the farms, the residences in those communities to protect and improve water quality in southern Indiana by focusing on stormwater runoff. I really encourage you to go to their website, because if you don't, I will spend the next 30 minutes talking to you about stormwater, its impact on the river, and what you can do to help. But there's a lot of really great information out there because that water flows from our yards, right, into the Ohio River. So we have a responsibility to how we care for the health of that river. And they say, ultimately, clean water, of course, is a means, but ultimately their chief aim is to improve the quality of life for the 200,000 plus constituents that live in those communities, because healthier rivers equals healthier communities equals healthier people. All right? We have a gift in our backyard, right? And we have a responsibility in our backyard. But I want for us to remember, and I'm trying to be somewhat more mindful of the time this week, Lee, than I have been in the past. I want you to know, though, that those visions of rivers of healing are not just like a geographical lesson from God. It's not just God saying, hey, waterfront property is nice. When the world is healed, I'm going to build a nice river throughout it, and we all get to live on it, and it'll be, our property values will go up, and everybody will feel better. Part of it is that this is a sign. These rivers are a sign. They're a sign of who we are called to be as the people of God. They're a sign of God's vision for the world, which is that healing and life flows from God, flows through his people, and flows out into the world. Because what does Jesus say? I tell you that rivers of living water will spring from the hearts of believers. So we are supposed to be part of God's great healing waters system. That water flows from God, flows through us, flows to the world. What is that water? That water is God's love, God's grace, God's healing, God's spirit. So, I want us to be thinking this week, and I thought of a lot. I thought I'll give you little blue cards that you can write on and you can take that home, or I'll give you blue ribbons to look like water, but But God has a better sign, I think, and that's water itself. So when you're driving home and you pass the Ohio River or you cross the Ohio River, I want you to think about these things. When you feel water running over your hands as you wash them or as you wash dishes, I want you to think of these things. When you are filling your pet's water bowl, I want you to think of these things. Right? When you just hear the sound of running water, I want you to think of these things. And this is what I want you to think of. What healing do you need to flow into you from the throne of God? But it doesn't stop there. What healing needs to flow from you into others? Your family and friends, the places where you work and play, the places where you live, the places where you shop and provide. What healing needs to flow through you into the world? Because we get to be channels of God's living water. God gives us that blessing to be a part of it. What healing needs to flow in and through you?
You have been listening to By the Well podcast from Wall Street United Methodist Church. Thank you for being a part of our community. As a reminder, visit us at wallstreetumc.org, and we invite you to like and share our podcast wherever you are listening.